In this video, I'll show you how to use filters in Tableau to explore subsets of your data. If you haven't done so already, download and open the Tableau workbook that this video uses as a starting point. On my screen, I have that workbook open now, and it uses a larger data set than we've used in some of the past videos that looked at Atlanta flight delays. Instead, in this data set, we have on-time, delayed, canceled, and diverted flights in the data. This gives us a lot of data to work with and a lot to filter. First, let's take a look at the summary table that's already built for us. This is helpful because it shows how the data is set up. We see the departure status of flights in the first column, followed by the arrival status of flights for each of 10 origin airports. Here you can see that flights can be canceled or diverted, but there's not a lot of flights for that in the data set. We also can have flights that departed from the origin airport late and arrived at the destination airport either late or on time. And we can also have flights that departed on time from the origin airport and then arrived at their destination either late or on time. If you look closely under the column for ATL, that's Atlanta, you can see a number that's familiar based on some of the past videos. It's this number, 5,244, and this represents flights that departed late and also arrived late. That's exactly the same flights as that we've used in previous videos using the Atlanta delays data set. So what if we wanted to build a chart using only these flights? There's an easy way to do that. First, let's duplicate this sheet and call it Atlanta delays. Then let's select the mark of interest, and then in the tooltip, click on the option for Keep Only. You can also find that same option by doing a right-click on the mark, and then instead finding the Keep Only in the menu. Either one works. And then looking in the filter shelf, we can see that it has created a filter for us, and the table has been filtered to only show that one mark. From here, we could build any visualization that we want, and the filter will limit to only include the data for these 5,244 Atlanta flight delays. For example, I'll drag the pills out of the row shelf and out of the column shelf and also out of the mark shelf. Then I'll double click on the field called Departure Delays in Minutes, DIP Delay Minutes, and then I'm going to use the drop-down caret to change the level of aggregation from a measure sum to a measure that's an average. And then hovering over the bar will show that there's an average delay of around 68 minutes from the Atlanta airport. And this is exactly what we had found in previous videos as well. So using a filter here has allowed us to use only that subset of data, even though we have much more data in Tableau. There are several ways to add filters in Tableau, and I'll show you that. Next, let's create a new worksheet and call it Delays Map. We'll build a map that shows a percentage of flights that are delayed for each origin airport. So first, we need to add a filter to remove canceled and diverted flights. I'm going to find the field called Dip Status for Departure Status, select it, and then drag and drop it into the filter shelf. You can see that when I do that, the filter dialog box comes up, and here we can select the data that we want. I'll check the boxes to keep only the on-time and delayed flights. That's late flights. On time and late. And then click OK. You'll see the new filter shown in the filter shelf. I really like how this is displayed for us. The filter shelf makes it clear what fields we've used to filter the data on our worksheet. You can also use its drop-down caret here and select Show Filter. This option adds something called an interactive filter because it lets the user select the data that they're interested in directly as part of the visualization. Now you'll see a menu to the right with categories of data that can be selected. It's helpful to know that for any pill, in your filter shelf, you can use that drop-down caret, and you can check or uncheck the drop-down in the menu for Show Filter. You can check or uncheck it, and that controls that. I also want to mention that you can click on any pill on the filter shelf and you can drag it out of the shelf to remove that filter. I'll hit undo for that though, because I do still want to use that filter. And then I'll go ahead and enable the show filter option again. We've added our filter, but we still need to build our map that shows the percentage of flights delayed for each origin airport. So in the data pane, I'm going to select both origin, that's the origin airport, and the field called dip delay 15. Dip delay 15 is an indicator variable with a value of 0 or 1. If a flight is delayed for 15 minutes or longer when departing, then this variable is counted as a delayed flight and given a value of 1. Otherwise, it's an on-time departing flight, and this field has a value of 0. We can use indicator variables like this in Tableau for calculating proportions or percentages. So with those two selected, I'm going to go over to Show Me, and then select a symbol map. And then close the Show Me. Notice that the level of aggregation for the indicator variable defaults to a sum. I don't want that. I'm going to go ahead and change it to an average using the drop-down caret. And now taking the average for this field will tell us the proportion of flights that are delayed for each airport. So for example, hovering over the Atlanta airport shows 0.22572. In other words, the portion of flights delayed out of this airport are around 23%. You can change the number formatting by using the drop-down caret for the pill and the marks card, and I do like to do that for proportions like this. So I'm going to go ahead and go over to use the drop-down caret here and then select Format. And then on the left, the Format pane comes up. I'm going to change it here to where we have, I'm going to click the Pane tab, and then under Default, you can find the number formatting right here. I'm going to click that drop-down caret, and then instead of automatic, I'm going to use percentage. And you can change the number of decimal places if you'd like. I'll drop it down to 1. And I'll hover again, and you can see that that number format has changed. I'll go ahead and close that menu. So Tableau has used the departure delay 15 field on size right now in the marks card when it generated my map. Yours could look a little bit different, but what I want to do instead is I want to use it on color. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this pill into color on the marks instead of size. And then I'm going to go ahead and change its color from blue, which is the default for mine at least. I'm going to go ahead and change it from blue to orange-blue diverging. And then I'm going to go ahead and select the reverse option so that the colors for the airports with a larger portion of delayed flights are in orange. I'll go ahead and select the stepped color option as well. And then I'm going to close this box. Let's also go ahead and take our auto-generated count field called Sheet 1 Count in the data pane, and let's drag and drop it onto size. And you can change the size a little bit if you would like. You can also customize what's shown in your tooltip. And so I'm going to go ahead and change the text for this. I don't like how it says count of sheet 1. So I'm going to go ahead and go over to the editor, click on, in the marks card, click on tooltip. This will bring up the editor. And I'm going to change count of sheet 1 to number of flights instead. And then I'm also going to change this field for average departure delay 15. Nobody's going to know what that means, so I'm going to go ahead and change it so it's clearer. I'm going to change it to % delayed. And click OK. And then if you go hover, you'll see those changes have been made in your tooltip. I think that tooltip is much easier to understand now. So this is a helpful map for us. Airports with a larger number of total flights are now displayed with larger circles. And we can also see that airports towards the western part of the United States have a smaller portion of delayed flights than those over here in the east. This is interesting to see and can help benchmark airports' on-time performance against airports of similar sizes. So what if we wanted to exclude canceled and diverted flights from all of our data visualizations that we create? We see our filter here, but we've only applied it to this one worksheet. You can do that by using the drop-down caret in the pill in the filter shelf. And there's a helpful option in there called Apply to Worksheets. By default, Tableau will apply the filters that we create only to the worksheet that we create them in. In other words, if I go back to the first worksheet that I created previously, it's not going to use this departure status filter in it. However, I can change this default by using this option called all using this data source. Instead, you could also use the selected worksheets option, and this lets you select specific worksheets that you want to filter to. So for example, I'll go ahead and select all using this data source, and then I'm going to go back to the first worksheet that we started with, and this shows that canceled and delayed flights have now been removed from our table and added to the filter shelf here. I can change it back to that default if you would like to by going back to the departure delays map, and then you can go back and select the drop-down caret again, apply to worksheets, and then you can change it. I'm going to go back and use only this worksheet again. And now it's only going to apply just to this worksheet. It's also possible to filter your data at the data source level, and this type of filter will apply to all sheets using the data connection. And it's useful if you only want to look at a subset of data for all visualizations in your workbook. So let's create a data source filter by over here right-clicking on the data source itself in the data pane, and then you can select Edit Data Source Filters, this option right here. And then you'll see that a dialog box comes up and you can enter all the filters that you need. So for example, you could add, you could click Add and then select Departure Status, DIP Status, select OK, and then you could use only on time and late flights and click OK again. So the one thing to note is that whenever you create a filter in this way, it will not add a pill to the filter shelf. So instead, well, first let me go ahead and click OK and show you that it is filtered now. And we don't have a new filter added to the filter shelf. We have the same one we had before. Instead, to find that filter, you would need to go back and go to the Edit Data Source Filters option again by right-clicking, and then go back to that, and then you could find it here, and then you can remove them if you want to. So I'm going to go ahead and just remove mine so that we don't really need that one. And I'll go back and remove it. And you might have noticed here on the right-hand side that you saw some changes as I added those filters. So far, we've only filtered by fields that are dimensions, but what's important to understand is that the filter menus and options will be different for dimensions and measures. So next, we'll use some filters for measures. Let's say that we want to focus only on longer haul flights that are over 700 miles. So let's drag distance, the distance of the flight, click on it, drag it, and drop it into filters, into the filter shelf. And we see several ways that we can aggregate the data here using a sum, an average, a median, a count. And using any of these aggregations will give us something called a summary level filter because Tableau filters the viz after performing a summary of the data. So let's select average and then click next. And then the numbers here will indicate that our average distance for flights out of all 10 of these origin airports vary from 565 miles to 1,283 miles. So currently the range of values option is highlighted, and you can use that option to identify airports with average distances between two numbers, between an upper and a lower limit. But there's also other options for at least and at most. Those let you indicate one lower or one upper limit. And then there's also a special option here that lets you filter out nulls or missing values. I'm going to choose at least and then enter 700 here for our lower limit. And then I'll click OK. And now you can see the filtered map. Instead of having 10 airports, now we only have 8 airports. And these are airports that have flights with an average distance of 700 miles or more. We filtered out 2 airports that focus on shorter haul flights, and those are not on our map anymore. We also see our new filter has been added to the filter shelf over here on the left. I'll click on its drop-down caret and select Show Filter. And then I can see that an interactive filter has been added to the right-hand side over here. You can slide that bar to change that lower limit if you wanted to, or you can also type in a number here. So what we've just done used a summary level filter, which is based on an aggregate, the average of distance. But I also want to show you how to set a record level filter. A record level filter will filter out rows of data before the aggregation is performed. So let's say that instead of filtering out airports with shorter haul flights, we want to exclude any flights with a distance less than 700 miles. So let's go ahead and let's duplicate our worksheet. And then let's remove that average distance from the filter shelf. I'll remove it by clicking it and dragging it out. Now let's take distance again and drag it into the filter shelf. And then in this box that comes up, instead of choosing one of the aggregations like we did before, let's choose all values here at the top. And this will filter at the record level. So select next, and then you'll see different numbers here this time. These different numbers indicate the distance for individual flights or rows of data rather than for airports. So this shows that we have flights that range from 67 miles to 4,983 miles. So once again, let's use the at least option and let's type in 700 here and click OK. So this time we do get a different map. This still has all 10 of our airports on it. And that's the same number of airports that we started with. So we haven't actually excluded any airports from this chart, but we use the same cutoff of 700. So why are the two maps so much different? Well, the difference is in the record level versus the summary level filtering that's performed for measures. For our summary level filter, that removes marks from our map, which are airports with average distance flights less than 700 miles. On the other hand, our record level filter removes flights with a distance less than 700 miles. So we still have all of our airports because they all have at least some flights that are longer than 700 miles. This is often tricky for new users. The point is that you need to be careful to set up the filter the way you want it, or you can get unexpected results. That's the end of this video about filtering, but be sure to save your workbook.